Hey friends, my name is Erin and today I'm filming my May TBR. I'm ready to be back and do another film. The funny thing is I filmed 3 videos in April and didn't edit a single one of them. Excited to share with you what I'm reading in May. I've already started. It's feeling like a good month. I'm filming in front of a different set of shelves because it's really late in the evening, and the ones I usually film in front of, there is just not enough light. So yeah, for May, my theme for May is going to be comfort. At the end of the school year, I am doing my best to survive each and every day, and so I'm just trying to make it through the month to summer. I am going to be doing comfort reading. I have my prompts like normal, and it's, like I said, it's off to a good start. My first prompt is series continuation. I'm going to be picking up The Dragon's Promise. I'm actually going to be listening to this on audiobook. I listened to the first one on audiobook, so I'm just going to keep that up, but I did enjoy the first one so much, and I couldn't resist these beautiful covers, so I ended up getting both of these for Christmas. I'm about 20% into this second book, and it's off to a very interesting start. My next prompt is the one I am really loving right now, and that is reread of favorites. I figured it was time to reread my namesake, Sabriel by Garth Nix. You can tell this is a well-worn, well-loved book. I am currently almost finished with it and definitely remembering why I loved it. It's also making me want to reread the whole series, which I haven't actually done in a while. I usually reread just Sabriel, and I'm realizing that the other 2 books in this are a little bit foggy for me. I also know there have been books published since that I never picked up because it did feel like a completed series. I'm not usually one to do like prequels or series in the same universe per se, because I do just love the main characters in this so much. But yeah, absolutely loving this. If you've never read Sabriel by Garth Nix, please go pick this up. It's one of the best fantasy necromancy books. All right, for prompt number 3, I have retelling, which is like one of my favorite tropes. And I'm gonna pick up Little Thieves by Margaret Owen. She wrote the Faithless Hawk series, which I really enjoyed the world and the uniqueness of it. This is a retelling of The Goose Girl, and if you don't know, The Goose Girl starts with a princess who's like handmaid forcibly takes her place, and the goose girl goes off and has to live as a goose girl. This is a retelling from the point of view of that handmaid. Based on this guy right here, I'm assuming it's going to be a darker retelling. For prompt number 4, I have Happy Vibe. I just want something that I can glide through and enjoy. I did have a few options, but I'm going to go with another throwback reread. This is The Lost Colony. It is the next book in the Artemis Fowl series, which I've been rereading. I love Artemis Fowl. It is just as good as I remember from back in the day. It's a great middle grade, such sassy characters, and a lot of good like fantasy species. I don't remember what this particular one is about, but I've reread 3 in the last, 2 years, and they've all been really funny. As you may know, prompt number 5 is a big book. I've been semi-successful. Of the 4 months so far this year, I've read 2 of the big books. I did not get to the one last month, which means it's going to carry over, and I am hopefully going to read Way of Kings. I am very excited about this book. It's just hard for me to burn through 1,000 pages at this time of the year. And I almost want to put it off till summer, but I'm going to try because I do want to really accomplish some heavy reading. The more of these big books I can get through, the better I'm going to feel by the end of the year, because they're all ones I want to read. I just gotta get over the mental hurdle of picking up something that is over 1,000 pages. For my next prompt, I have graphic novel. I love a good graphic novel. I have some great ones on my shelf, and I actually am going to pick up 2. I'm going to go with Monstrous Volume 3 and 4. According to my Goodreads and spreadsheets, I've read Volume 3, but I don't remember enough of it. This is one of those graphic novels that I really love, but it is hard to follow. The artwork is beautiful, the story is engaging, but it jumps back and forth between a lot of different characters, and I have left it a little bit too long. So I'm hoping to get through both 3 and 4 and kind of catch back up with whatever it is that I have forgotten. It is a very dark series with a lot of dark characters. That being said, it also has like kitsunes and nine-tailed cats. Next up, we have a prompt for a book from the 90s, and I'm going to read one of my classics called Mana and Boy. Can't tell you anything about it, but maybe I'll be able to at the end of this month. We'll see. For a favorite genre trope, I'm going to put another chunky book on the list. I recently picked up Morning Star. This is the third book in the Red Rising series. I've read book 1 and book 2 and really loved them both. It is, again, a little bit chunky, so we'll see if we get to this, but this is a series I've really been itching to get back into, and there's an incentive that my partner has read like all of the ones that are out. I don't know, remember if it's 6 or 7 at this point, but I need to play catch up a little bit. It's certainly a grim book. I've put a few darker books on this comfort reading month. I think the fact that it's such a fast-paced fantasy and I'm pretty heavily invested in the main characters at this point, put it solidly in that comfort zone for me. All right, next up, the prompt is small break. And initially I was thinking some of my like short stories or novellas, but I'm actually going to pick up another No Fear Shakespeare and go with the Comedy of Errors. I really just want to keep slowly knocking out some of those classics that I've been trying to get through. And this seems like a chance. If I get to this point in the list, very iffy. After Way of Kings and Morning Star, I just don't know. Like I said, the first few days of the month have been really strong reading, but that does not necessarily mean it will continue. 2 more books left on this list. The next one is The Vlog. I read the first book box and then never picked up this one. It is Lord of the Fly Fest, and it's about influencers who go to a fly fest and then murders start happening. So it sounds cool. The actual dust jacket cover is pretty cool. It comes with little gifts, so there is every incentive to get to it and just no actual time to get to it. Is favorite trope. I've had this book Asunder on our shelves for a little bit. It was a random one that we found and picked up at our local bookstore. It is gonna follow a princess whose mother was assassinated by supposedly her fiance. So now their kingdoms are at war. She has to find a new suitor and her world has just been torn apart. Meanwhile, you also follow another character who joins a thieves guild in hopes of clearing the fiance's name because the fiance is also a prince. So he's loyal to that prince and he wants to clear his prince's name. I really love royals and royalty as a trope. I also really love assassins as a trope. And I'm guessing there's maybe going to be a little bit of romance. I'm hoping. I do only have 1 audiobook on my list at this point, and I usually try to listen to 2. So I am going to choose a nonfiction that I picked up with Libro FM's like educator series. If you are an educator, you can apply to get a free audiobook each month. It's from a curated selection that includes some nonfiction, usually some YA literature, and then some kids books. So this is going to be a nonfiction pick that I got through that program. I believe I may be missing this a little bit, but I think it's called This Is Not Hysteria. And it's about the history of women's medicine and things you may not know because you just have not been educated about the female body. So just things that like medicine has not taught us as women and schooling has not taught us about as women that we should probably know about our own bodies is what I think the premise is. I'm very excited about it. I think it's a very interesting topic and certainly one I obviously want to be educated in. That is it as far as books. I will be doing my TBR craft. That'll be a way to like see the books I actually picked up in April since I never got around to editing my April TBR, unfortunately. So check it out. All right, y'all, excuse the mess. I got a lot going on my desk right here, but we are going to wrap up April today. I will start off by saying I finished one of my March books towards the beginning of April. I think in the first few days, I finished Shadow Games, which is the first book in the omnibus by Glenn Cook. It was okay. I think the first set by Glenn Cook was much better.
And I will say this one seemed much more a product of its times. I probably will not continue reading past this omnibus right here. But I did finish Shadow Games, and you'll see this book pop back up. My theme for April was magical, so it focused a lot on some of my favorite magical tropes. The first one being creatures. I decided to go with the first book in Earthsea. I didn't know if there would be creatures in this, but they definitely had like hawk familiars, and I think if I remember right, there were dragons. This one is actually getting a little bit like confused in my mind with one of the other books I read, Magician's Apprentice, but I did really like the story of this. It follows Ged, who is on his way to becoming a wizard and is dealing with a lot of just normal teenage stuff, and as a wizard, some of that teenage angst has higher consequences. So this also has the first 4 books, and I only read the first book of this. I enjoyed it. I gave it, I think, a 4-star rating. Prompt number 2 is something that's rated 4.5 or higher on Goodreads, and I went with Know My Name by Chanel Miller. This is probably my top read of the month. It is incredibly tragic, but also just so well written and honest and beautifully done. It's really hard to read, and I definitely cried, but I would 100% recommend picking this up. Like I said, very tragic, but I guess I just wasn't expecting how well written it would be. Like sometimes when people write their own story, they are not authors themselves, and Chanel is definitely like a good writer, and she is incredibly honest, like I said, throughout the whole thing, and I can't imagine how hard that would be to publish this book, but it's just beautifully done. Okay, prompt number 3 was a water setting. I went with one of my classics, Master and Commander. Apparently there's a movie based on this, which I have not watched yet. I DNF'd this about 130-40 pages in. There's so much like nautical talk. There's a whole section, and this is some of that like just how classics go, but there's a whole section where they just talk about the length and dimensions of boats. And it took forever. I was honestly about 100 pages in before they even got off the dock. And so I was really surprised when my fiance was like, oh, there's that. It's like a very action-oriented movie, but the book is not that. So yeah, I did DNF Master and Commander. Okay, Dark Magic is next. This is where I did pick up the second Dreams of Steel. One of the kudos I will give to this series is that they do dark magic really well. I do enjoy the characters. The synopsis this time was a little bit better. In the first book, you're kind of following some of the characters from the first omnibus, and they're trying to get back to the origins of the Black Company, and they get caught up in a war with some of their enemies from their past. And in the second book, things have happened in that battle that it's still an ongoing battle, but they've kind of been separated. And so you get to see more of the lady, who's one of my favorite characters. Unfortunately, you get to see less of One Eye and Goblin, who are also some of my favorite characters. But if I can say anything about this, it does have a lot of darkness in it. Did not get to my big book, so I'm going to set that off to the side and go to school for my next prompt. I read Good Grief 3rd grade. I'm going to be taking back and probably just donating and leaving at school. It was a good book. It's a little bit old, I think. The synopsis is a class clown who has to work with another class clown, and they keep thinking the other person is the reason why they're always getting in trouble. The main girl in this story has promised her parents that in 3rd grade she's not going to get in as much trouble, but then she gets paired up with basically her school rival. I don't think like one of the main messages they were trying to convey was that like you shouldn't lie until like blame other people for your work. You got to take responsibility for your own actions. And the like message I think did not come across very clear, because she like lies about the other kid doing something and then basically gets away with it. Everybody's like, oh, thank you for telling the truth, don't worry about it. So I feel like it wasn't quite the right message. Prompt number 7 is Witches. I picked up, this was my last physical book actually, Hounded. I should not have finished this book, I'll say that. I had like maybe 2 days left in the month, so I just decided to finish reading it, otherwise it probably would have been a DNF. I would not recommend it to anybody. It's so obviously written by a man in like the worst way. There's like 5 female characters. 3 of them like kiss him, are all over him. All of them are described as gorgeous. And then the ones that don't want to kiss him are like the villains. It's just awful. And then on top of that, he's like a druid that's been around for centuries. So he'll like quote Shakespeare and then say, well, nowadays I'd have to say like, what's up, dude, instead of quote Shakespeare. It just was very weirdly written at times, and the ending was so strange and unnecessary. It was bad all around. I'm definitely getting rid of this book. Prompt number 8, Magical Objects. I picked up Fragile Threads of Power. I actually read this or listened to this on audiobook. I loved this book. It was a top read of the month for sure. V.E. Schwab has been an author that I've enjoyed everything I've read by her. And I really think like her style of adventure feels classic, but also unique at the same time. I love the characters, and there was a good mix of seeing characters you know and love and getting to meet new characters. So yeah, it is a really enjoyable book. This does follow Kel, Delilah, Alucard. You get to see more of them like 5 years in the future. So the only critique I had of this was like, in an audiobook, it kept doing flashbacks, and I struggled sometimes to know where we were in the timeline. But other than that, solid addition to that series. My last prompt was Fae and Fairy, and I listened to Thornhedge on audiobook as well. It's a very short novella by T. Kingfisher, another one of my new favorite authors, and it was solid. It was about basically like a reverse Rapunzel, where you have someone named Toadling who has been protecting a girl that's been asleep in a tower. Come to find out that she's trying to keep the girl asleep in the tower because the girl is not good. There's basically a knight that comes along and tries to save her. Toadling is trying to figure out how to get this knight to stop. I think it was like one of my lesser favorites of T. Kingfisher, but still like really enjoyable. It just didn't have, I think it was just too short. Like I would have liked more, because one of the things I love about T. Kingfisher's writing is like the slow build that she does. You just didn't quite get that in a novella. I got a nice little rainbow going. Here are the books I read in April. Sorry you didn't get an April video, but hopefully this will make up for that somewhat. I hope you had a great reading month. Let me know what you're reading in May, and I'll see you later. Bye, friends.